Welcome back, my quantum uncertain observers. I'm your wave-particle dual host, simultaneously right and wrong across infinite realities. You're tuned into the Multiverse Employee Handbook, the only podcast that treats your fundamental understanding of light like a Form QM42, requiring approval from both the Department of Waves and the Bureau of Particles. Speaking of brilliant science communicators who make the universe's most baffling mysteries accessible to us mere mortals, let's give a proper quantum round of applause to Anton Petrov and his absolutely wonderful YouTube channel. His recent video, MIT Quantum Experiment Proves Einstein Wrong, tackles the same MIT research we're exploring today. And honestly, it's a masterclass in breaking down complex quantum physics without losing the wonder. Anton has this remarkable gift, and if you haven't watched his take on this experiment, do yourself a favor and check it out after this episode. The man makes quantum mechanics feel like a conversation with your smartest friend who just happens to know everything about the universe.
Cool.
Though I suspect somewhere in the quantum foam of reality, there's a universe where Anton's video titles are written by a committee of overly cautious physics professors, resulting in thrilling headlines like, "Recent experimental results suggest possible minor refinements to certain aspects of early 20th century theoretical predictions, pending peer review." Today we're diving into the most famous physics experiment that refuses to behave sensibly. The double-slit test that proves light is both a wave and a particle, but only when you're not looking directly at it. It's like corporate transparency, but with actual scientific backing. But first, gather round the Quantum Measurement Requisition Department, my reality-bending observers, for a tale that would make even Niels Bohr question their complementarity principle. In the fluorescent-lit realm of quantum improbability solutions, specifically in the Department of Quantum Ambiguity, which existed in a superposition of definitive and completely uncertain, Dr. Patricia Wavelength was having what could charitably be called a supply closet crisis. It had started, as these things often do, with the simple quest for a quantum-compliant number 2 pencil. Dr. Wavelength had been tasked with filling out Form QM137B, Request for Permission to Request Measurement Permission, and company policy strictly required graphite-based writing implements that existed in a definitive classical state. But the supply closet, like most things at QIS, operated according to principles that defied both logic and basic inventory management. Dr. Wavelength rummaged past boxes labeled Schrödinger's staplers and Heisenberg's Post-it notes, which were simultaneously stuck and unstuck until observed, when she noticed something peculiar behind a stack of quantum-entangled copy paper. There, barely visible, was a sealed door she'd never seen before. The door itself was unremarkable except for 2 thin vertical slits cut precisely into its surface, through which faint light seemed to flicker. Curious, Dr. Wavelength approached and peered through the left slit. What she saw was astounding. A pristine underground laboratory where researchers in MIT sweatshirts were carefully arranging what appeared to be thousands of impossibly tiny atoms in perfect crystalline formations, using laser beams that created glowing geometric patterns in the air. The whole setup looked like someone had miniaturized the universe's most sophisticated physics experiment. "Fascinating," she murmured, then moved to peer through the right slit. But now she saw something completely different. The same laboratory, but the researchers appeared to be measuring individual photons bouncing off the atomic arrangements with detection equipment that seemed to track particle trajectories with impossible precision. It was as if she'd glimpsed two entirely different experiments in the same space. Dr. Wavelength blinked and looked through both slits simultaneously. The result was even stranger. Instead of seeing a combination of both views, she observed a bizarre interference pattern overlaying the entire laboratory, as if the very act of observing through both openings had created some kind of visual quantum superposition. The MIT researchers seemed to flicker between different activities, their experiments existing in multiple states at once. What in the name of Einstein's mustache is going on down there? She whispered. Just then the door abruptly swung open with a hiss of escaping helium, and a young researcher in thick glasses and a "I break for Bose-Einstein condensates" t-shirt walked past, muttering into a tablet. "Excuse me," Dr. Wavelength called out. "What exactly are you folks doing down there?" The researcher paused, adjusting his glasses. "Oh, hey! We're running the ultimate double-slit experiment using ultracold lithium atoms as both the slits and the detection apparatus. We're settling a century-old debate between Einstein and Bohr about wave-particle duality. Turns out Einstein was wrong. You literally cannot observe both wave and particle properties simultaneously. The atom's quantum fuzziness controls everything." "Quantum fuzziness controls everything?" Dr. Wavelength repeated, a corporate light bulb flickering to life above her head. Within minutes, she was explaining the discovery to the square-haired boss, whose geometric hair practically vibrated with bureaucratic excitement. "Let me understand this correctly, Dr. Wavelength," he said, his cubic coiffure shifting through several impossible angles. "These MIT researchers have definitive proof that observation changes reality, and that you cannot obtain complete information about a quantum system." "Precisely, sir." "This is revolutionary," the square-haired boss declared. "We must immediately implement these findings across all QIS operations. If MIT has proven that observation fundamentally alters what you're measuring, then clearly our employee monitoring systems are scientifically flawed." "I don't think that's quite how—" "Furthermore," he continued, his enthusiasm building to dangerous levels, "if quantum complementarity means you can't simultaneously measure all properties of a system, then obviously our quarterly performance reviews are asking for impossible data. We've been demanding wave and particle information from our employees when the universe itself says this violates fundamental physics." Dr. Wavelength watched in growing horror as the square-haired boss began drafting memos implementing quantum uncertainty protocols for HR evaluations and complementarity-compliant monitoring systems for the accounting department. "Sir," she attempted weakly, "I think you might be misapplying quantum mechanics to macroscopic corporate nonsense," he declared. "If it's good enough for MIT, it's good enough for QIS. From now on, all employee observations will be conducted according to strict quantum complementarity guidelines. We'll measure productivity or efficiency, but never both simultaneously." And that's how Dr. Wavelength learned that while the universe might have fundamental limits on what can be observed, there were apparently no such restrictions on corporate misinterpretation of scientific principles. Though she had to admit, somewhere in the quantum foam of possibility, there might actually be a universe where this approach led to more sensible management policies. And that brings us to the fascinating science behind Dr. Wavelength's discovery, a century-old intellectual heavyweight bout that makes corporate boardroom drama look like a peaceful meditation retreat. Unlike the epic lightsaber duels of Star Wars, this battle was fought with thought experiments mathematical equations, and the kind of polite academic passive aggression that could freeze helium. Picture this. October 1927, the 5th Solvay Conference in Brussels. The world's greatest physicists have gathered to discuss the newly minted quantum mechanics, and the atmosphere is thick with both cigarette smoke and existential uncertainty. In one corner, we have Albert Einstein, the man who'd already revolutionized our understanding of space, time, and gravity, now deeply uncomfortable with the probabilistic weirdness of quantum theory. In the other corner, Niels Bohr, the Danish physicist who'd helped birth quantum mechanics and was perfectly content to let the universe be fundamentally fuzzy. Einstein's objection wasn't just philosophical nitpicking. He'd devised what he thought was a knockout punch. His thought experiment went like this. Imagine our double slit setup, but mount the entire screen on delicate springs, so sensitive they could detect the tiny recoil when a photon hits. Einstein argued that by measuring this recoil, you could determine which slit the photon passed through, gaining particle information while still observing the wave-like interference pattern on the screen. Boom! Both wave and particle properties observed simultaneously, complementarity defeated, and quantum mechanics revealed as incomplete. It was brilliant, elegant, and, as Bohr immediately demonstrated, completely wrong. Bohr's counter-argument was swift and devastating. He pointed out that to measure the screen's recoil precisely enough to determine the photon's path, you'd need to know the screen's initial position and momentum with extraordinary accuracy. But here's the cosmic joke. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle applies to the screen too. The more precisely you determine its position to measure the recoil, the more uncertain its momentum becomes. This uncertainty would cause the screen to jiggle unpredictably, washing out the very interference pattern you're trying to observe. The universe, it seemed, had built-in information security protocols that even Einstein couldn't hack. This wasn't just academic point scoring. It was a fundamental question about the nature of reality itself. Einstein believed in what physicists call local realism, the idea that objects have definite properties independent of observation, like Dr. Wavelength's pencil existing in a specific location, whether she's looking for it or not.
Okay.
Bohr's complementarity principle suggested something far stranger, that quantum properties only become real when measured. And attempting to measure incompatible properties simultaneously is like asking, what's north of the North Pole?
Wait, what?
For nearly a century, this remained a theoretical standoff, with most physicists siding with Bohr, but unable to definitively test Einstein's specific challenge. When we return from this brief quantum intermission, we'll discover how MIT's 2025 Ultracold atom experiment finally settled this debate with atomic precision, literally using individual atoms as both the slits and the detection apparatus, creating the most direct test of complementarity ever achieved. Spoiler alert, the universe's information security protocols proved even more sophisticated than the square-haired boss could have imagined. Welcome back, my complementarity-confused colleagues. While you were away, our automated response system attempted to measure its own wave-particle duality and promptly crashed after achieving what IT described as a recursive observation loop of existential proportions. The system is currently displaying error messages in superposition, simultaneously fatal error and operating normally until someone from tech support observes it directly. Meanwhile, executives at Quantum Improbability Solutions have been fomenting some new ideas about what they're calling the Quantum Certainty Initiative, a bold corporate strategy to eliminate all uncertainty from quantum measurements through enhanced management oversight. Though I should note that the laws of physics have already filed a preliminary injunction, and Heisenberg's ghost has been spotted in the legal department, presumably to testify as an expert witness. Now let's dive deeper into Einstein's 1927 challenge, a thought experiment so clever it took nearly a century and atoms cooled to near absolute zero to definitively refute it. Einstein's Gedanken experiment, as the Germans poetically call thought experiments, was deceptively simple in concept, but devastating in its implications. Picture the classic double-slit setup, a beam of light aimed at a barrier with two narrow openings, producing that famous zebra-striped interference pattern on a detection screen. This interference pattern was ironclad proof of light's wave nature. Waves from both slits overlapping, reinforcing in some places to create bright bands, cancelling in others to create dark zones. But Einstein had a cunning plan. What if, he proposed, we mount the entire detection screen on springs so delicate they could measure the tiny recoil when individual photons strike? Think of it like cosmic billiards. When a photon hits the screen, Newton's third law demands the screen recoils slightly in the opposite direction. By measuring this recoil, Einstein argued, you could calculate the photon's momentum and trajectory backward to determine which slit it passed through. Here's why Einstein thought this was his checkmate move. Unlike previous attempts to detect witch path information that involved blocking slits or placing detectors near them, his spring-mounted screen wouldn't interfere with the photon's journey at all. The photon would travel undisturbed from source to screen, maintaining its wave-like behavior and creating the interference pattern. Only after it had already arrived and created the pattern would you gain the particle information from measuring the recoil. Einstein believed he'd found the universe's loophole, a way to observe the interference pattern, then retroactively determine the particle path. It was like having your quantum cake and eating it too. A violation of complementarity that would prove quantum mechanics incomplete and vindicate his belief in objective reality. The brilliance of this challenge wasn't just technical, it was philosophical. Einstein was essentially arguing that if reality is objective and deterministic, as he believed, then there should be ways to access complete information about quantum systems, even if we hadn't figured out how yet. The wave-particle duality, in his view, was just a limitation of our measurement techniques, not a fundamental property of nature. But Bohr's response was swift and mathematically devastating. Bohr pointed out that Einstein had overlooked a crucial detail. To measure the screen's recoil precisely enough to determine which slit the photon used, you need to know the screen's initial momentum with extraordinary accuracy. But, and here's the cosmic punchline, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle applies to the measuring apparatus too. The more precisely you determine the screen's initial momentum to accurately measure the tiny photon recoil, the more uncertain its position becomes. This position uncertainty causes the screen to jiggle unpredictably during the measurement, like trying to read fine print on a vibrating phone. This jiggling blurs and eventually destroys the very interference pattern you're trying to observe. Bohr had demonstrated that gaining the particle information necessarily destroys the wave information, not due to crude experimental interference, but because of the fundamental uncertainty relations governing all quantum systems, including the measurement apparatus itself. To put this in corporate terms, Einstein's challenge was like trying to simultaneously audit your accounting department while maintaining complete trust in their competence. The very act of detailed auditing undermines the trust and collaborative atmosphere that allows the department to function optimally. You can have rigorous oversight or seamless collaboration, but the universe's HR department has determined that both simultaneously violates fundamental management principles.
Oh.
The deeper implication was staggering. The universe itself enforces information limits not through crude barriers or clumsy detection methods, but through the mathematical structure of reality itself. Complementarity wasn't a bug in quantum mechanics. It was a feature of existence itself. But for nearly a century, this remained a theoretical victory for Bohr. While physicists accepted complementarity based on its mathematical rigor and experimental success, Einstein's specific challenge had never been directly tested with the precision he'd imagined. The technology simply didn't exist to create the ultra-sensitive measurement apparatus his thought experiment required. That is, until 2025, when MIT researchers realized they didn't need to build Einstein's impossible apparatus. They could use individual atoms themselves as both the measurement device and the quantum system being measured. Enter Wolfgang Ketterle's team at MIT, the 2001 Nobel Prize winner who spent decades perfecting the art of making atoms so cold they barely move, then using them to explore the universe's deepest secrets. In July 2025, Ketterle's group published what might be the most elegant resolution of a physics debate in history. They stripped the double-slit experiment down to its absolute quantum essentials. Instead of Einstein's classical springs and mechanical measurement devices, the MIT team created something far more sophisticated: a crystal lattice of over 10,000 ultra-cold lithium atoms, each cooled to temperatures just millionths of a degree above absolute zero. At these extreme temperatures, the atom's quantum properties dominate completely. They exist in pure quantum states with precisely controlled fuzziness or uncertainty in their positions. Here's the brilliant insight. Each atom in this lattice acts as both a slit for photons to scatter off and a quantum measurement device itself. When a single photon interacts with this atomic array, it's like having thousands of tiny quantum referees, each operating according to the same fundamental rules that govern the Einstein-Bohr debate. The MIT team could then tune the atom's quantum uncertainty, their positional fuzziness, with laser precision. When the atoms were made more uncertain in position, more fuzzy, the scattered photons behaved like waves, creating interference patterns. When the atoms were precisely localized, less fuzzy, the photons scattered like particles, revealing path information but destroying the interference. This is where the experiment becomes almost poetic in its simplicity. The measurement apparatus Einstein proposed, those delicate springs and position detectors, are replaced by the quantum uncertainty of the atoms themselves. There are no classical components that could potentially violate quantum mechanics, no mechanical devices that might somehow bypass complementarity through clever engineering. The key result was unambiguous. The atom's quantum uncertainty directly controlled the wave versus particle behavior of the scattered light. More atomic fuzziness meant more wave-like photon behavior. More atomic precision meant more particle-like photon behavior. The trade-off was exact, fundamental, and unavoidable. But here's the truly remarkable finding. The experiment showed no trace of Einstein's predicted spring effect, no classical recoil mechanism that could provide path information without destroying the wave properties. The atoms themselves, operating purely according to quantum mechanical principles, enforced complementarity with mathematical precision. What MIT proved is that complementarity isn't enforced by crude measurement devices or experimental limitations. It's built into the fabric of quantum reality itself. Even when you eliminate all classical measurement apparatus and work with pure quantum systems, the universe still maintains its information security protocols. You can know where the photon went, particle information, or observe how it interferes with itself, wave information, but the quantum mechanics of the atoms themselves prevents simultaneous access to both.
Access denied.
To put this in corporate terms, imagine QIS trying to simultaneously measure employee productivity while maintaining perfect workplace morale. Traditional approaches might involve installing obvious monitoring software, classical measurement devices that everyone knows will affect behavior. But MIT's approach would be like having the office environment itself. The desks, chairs, and coffee machines operate according to quantum uncertainty principles. The more precisely you try to monitor productivity, the more the work environment itself becomes uncertain and collaborative effectiveness decreases. It's not that your monitoring equipment is crude or obvious. It's that the fundamental nature of workplace dynamics makes simultaneous measurement impossible. The MIT experiment effectively shows that the universe operates more like a quantum workplace than a classical corporation. The employees, photons, and management structure, atoms, all follow the same quantum rules, and these rules mathematically prevent the kind of total information access that classical thinking demands. This wasn't just a technical tour de force. It was a philosophical statement about the nature of reality. The experiment demonstrated that quantum mechanics isn't a temporary approximation waiting to be replaced by a more complete theory, as Einstein hoped. Instead, quantum uncertainty and complementarity appear to be fundamental features of how information itself behaves in our universe. Wolfgang Ketterle's atoms had become the ultimate referees in the century-old Einstein-Bohr debate, and their verdict was unambiguous. Bohr was right, Einstein was wrong, and the universe's information management system is even more sophisticated than the most paranoid corporate IT department could devise. Well, my complementarity-compliant colleagues, we've reached the end of another quantum measurement crisis. Today we've learned that in the multiverse of wave-particle duality, every photon exists in a superposition of behaving sensibly and defying all classical logic until observed by an ultracold atom with trust issues. MIT's 2025 experiment has delivered the most definitive scientific verdict in recent memory. Complementarity isn't just a measurement artifact or a limitation of our experimental techniques. It's a fundamental feature of reality itself. The universe operates on a strict need-to-know basis, and apparently, we don't need to know everything simultaneously. Quantum mechanics isn't incomplete, as Einstein hoped, but rather elegantly complete in ways that prevent the kind of total information access that classical physics promised. Now, Einstein was wrong about this specific challenge, but let's be clear. His relentless questioning of quantum mechanics drove some of the most important advances in physics. Without Einstein's intellectual stubbornness, we might never have developed the experimental precision needed to test these fundamental questions. Sometimes being magnificently wrong in the right direction is more valuable than being quietly correct. Einstein's legacy isn't diminished by MIT's findings. It's enhanced, because his challenges pushed science to become sophisticated enough to definitively answer them. Of course, Somewhere in the quantum foam of reality, there's undoubtedly a universe where you can measure both wave and particle properties simultaneously, where quantum mechanics operates like a fully transparent government agency, and where corporations like Quantum Improbability Solutions actually make logical decisions based on complete information. In that universe, performance reviews probably make sense, quarterly projections are accurate, and the square-haired boss's geometric hair follows basic laws of physics. Frankly, it sounds terrifying. Want to explore more quantum corporate chaos? Visit us at multiverseemployeehandbook.com, where you'll find fascinating science news, deep dives into wave-particle workplace dynamics, and our latest blog series, The Uncertainty Principles Guide to Performance Reviews, Why Your Boss Can't Measure Your Productivity and Morale Simultaneously. And if you've enjoyed today's Complementarity compliant adventure, why not share it with a fellow quantum observer? Perhaps you know someone struggling with the impossible corporate demand to be both innovative and risk-averse, creative and consistent, efficient and thorough. Spread our signal like quantum interference patterns. This is your wave-particle dual correspondent, reminding you that in the multiverse of quantum mechanics, we're all just observers trying to measure reality without collapsing our job security. Remember, you can know where your career is going or how fast it's changing, but the universe's HR department has determined that knowing both simultaneously violates fundamental employment principles.
The Multiverse Employee Handbook was created by Rob Corrigan. The host, David, is a professional voice actor who has digitized his voice through 11 Labs voice cloning technology. All episode thumbnails are created with OpenAI, and music and sound effects come from Pixabay, which are generated by human artists. Everything else, the writing, jokes, research, sound editing, and coffee consumption, is 100% human-made by a human. No cats are harmed in the making of this podcast. Visit our website for more information about the Multiverse Employee Handbook.